Update 1. I changed our routine completely. Started waking up earlier, often gone before she even woke up. My schedule became unpredictable. Some nights I'd be home for dinner. Others I'd text a simple working late with no explanation. The confusion on her face grew every day. "You're never around anymore," she complained one night. "I'm starting to feel like a single woman." "How interesting," I replied. "Is that what you want?" She backpedaled immediately. "That's not what I meant. I just miss you." H&M, was all I said before going back to my book. I could feel her staring at me, trying to figure out what had changed. 2 weeks after finding her list, I joined this high-end gym downtown and hired a personal trainer. I bought new clothes that actually fit me better. Nothing flashy, just upgraded from department store to higher quality. Got a haircut at a fancy barber shop. Not major changes, but enough that people noticed. When she commented on my appearance during dinner, I just shrugged and said, just needed some changes. The way she studied me afterward told me everything. She was recalculating my value in her head, like she was seeing me with fresh eyes and didn't like that other women might be seeing the same thing. I created distance in other ways, too. Our weekend brunches became solo trips for me. Meeting some colleagues to discuss a project, I'd say, not giving her a chance to join. Truth was simpler. I was building a life that didn't revolve around her approval. Through mutual friends, I found out her friend Megan had been filling her head with freedom fantasies for months. Men are replaceable, and the dating pool is better than ever, were apparently their favorite topics. This friend had turned bitter after her husband left her for someone younger, a detail my wife conveniently never mentioned. Megan didn't get the great divorce settlement she bragged about either. Another convenient omission. One Thursday afternoon, I was going through some old boxes in our storage room looking for some paperwork when I found a journal Amber had kept during the early years of our marriage. I know it's not cool to read someone's private stuff, but given what I'd already discovered, I felt justified. What I read confirmed everything I suspected and worse. Early entries were loving, talking about our future together. But entries from about 2 years ago started changing. Met Jay's husband today. He just bought her a beach house for their anniversary. Why can't Jake be more ambitious? And, Megan says, I settled too young. Says I could have landed someone with real money if I'd waited. The most recent entry was from just a month before. Richard says, I deserve better than what Jake can provide. He's right. I've wasted my prime years on someone who will never understand the lifestyle I deserve. Richard, who the, was Richard? I did some digging. Richard Davis was a senior partner at her law firm, married in his 52nd, known for mentoring young paralegals. I checked our phone records, dozens of calls and texts between them, often late at night or early morning when I was at the gym. The pieces were falling into place. One evening, I invited colleagues over, something I rarely did. Not my usual work buddies, but new connections from the elite security firm I was interviewing with, successful, ambitious people who talked about 7-figure contracts and international assignments. One guy casually mentioned his vacation home in Bali. Another talked about how his wife just started her own nonprofit because money wasn't an issue anymore. I noticed how my wife lingered nearby, hanging on every word, her eyes widening at the mention of the kind of lifestyle she clearly craved. Her narrative about me was being challenged by outside perspectives. She was seeing what I was capable of becoming without her. After they left, she was unusually attentive. Your friends seem really successful, she said, trying to sound casual. They're at the top of their field, I replied. They work incredibly hard. You never mentioned you knew people like that, she said, clearly fishing. There's a lot we haven't been talking about lately, isn't there? I responded, holding her gaze until she looked away. Her attempts to reconnect became obvious, wearing dresses I complimented months ago, making my favorite meals for no reason, suggesting weekend getaways like we used to. But I maintained emotional distance, saying thanks, but never showing enthusiasm. One random Tuesday, she decided to wear lingerie under her robe when I got home from work, like I was supposed to drop everything and worship her. I looked at her, said, I'm not really in the mood. Long day, and went to take a shower. The stunned look on her face was worth every second of the cold shower I took after. On a Thursday night, I deliberately took a call in front of her. My contact at the elite firm offering me the position, $295,000 base salary plus performance bonuses that could push it over $400,000. Significantly more travel, but the company provides accommodations in every major city. I accepted immediately, watching her expression change from casual interest to sudden attention. You took a new job without discussing it with me? She asked after I hung up, her voice a mix of shock and what sounded like panic. It's been in the process for weeks, I said calmly. I didn't want to jinx it by talking about it too soon. But what about us? That sounds like you'll be gone all the time. I thought you wanted financial growth, I replied. Isn't that what you've been hinting at for months? She had no answer for that. That night, she tried initiating sex for the first time in months. I kissed her forehead and claimed I was exhausted. The shock on her face was priceless. The dynamic had completely flipped. Now she was seeking validation I wasn't eager to give. I discovered more about her exit plans through careful observation. Her browser history showed apartment listings, all in the expensive part of town she'd always wanted to live in. Email receipts for career coaching sessions focused on leveraging divorce for financial security. Not kidding. And text messages to Megan about starting fresh and getting what she deserves. What really got me was finding a saved draft email to a divorce attorney outlining how she'd been a supportive wife who sacrificed her career for her husband and deserved appropriate compensation. This from a woman who worked part-time at best, spent more than she earned, and whose biggest sacrifice was having to drive a Lexus instead of a Mercedes. __ delusional. Update 2. That weekend, she watched me pack an overnight bag. Where you going? She asked, trying to sound casual, but couldn't hide the edge in her voice. Seattle meeting with the new team. Might extend to Sunday, I said without elaborating. You've been gone a lot lately, she said, following me around the bedroom. Is everything okay with us? I looked at her directly. That depends on what you want us to be. The color drained from her face. I thought she might confess everything: the list, the secret account, her conversations with Megan. Instead, she forced a smile. Just missing you, that's all. I nodded and continued packing. Truth was, I was going to Seattle, but not just for meetings. I was looking at condos in a luxury high-rise downtown. Knowledge before action, always. The morning before I got back, she called me frantic. Turned out her car was making a weird noise and wouldn't start. She wanted me to cancel my meetings and come home early to deal with it. Just call a mechanic, I said. Use the emergency credit card if needed. But I don't know anything about cars. What if they rip me off? Then you'll have learned an expensive lesson about adulting, I replied. I believe in your ability to handle this. I hung up while she was still protesting. A year ago, I would have rushed home to fix it for her. Funny how quickly priorities change when you see someone's true colors. But while I was in Seattle, I did something more important than house hunting. I hired a private investigator. My buddy from the military recommended him, an ex-special forces guy who specialized in infidelity cases. I gave him all the info I had on Richard Davis and asked him to dig deeper. I told him money was no object. I wanted everything. When I returned from Seattle, I maintained my new routine. Gym in the morning, longer hours at work, minimal engagement at home. Amber seemed increasingly desperate for my attention, which I gave sparingly. The power dynamic had completely reversed. I focused on preparing our finances for the inevitable split. Started moving money to accounts she couldn't access. Nothing illegal, just protecting what was rightfully mine. Documented all our assets and her spending patterns. Created spreadsheets showing how much of our income went to her shopping, her Pilates classes, her girls' trips. 2 weeks later, the PI delivered his report. It was more damning than I could have imagined. Richard and Amber had been having an affair for at least 6 months. The PI had photos of them meeting at an upscale hotel downtown, receipts for jewelry Richard had bought her, and screenshots of their text messages that his specialist had recovered. In these messages, Amber referred to me as her starter husband, and laughed about how clueless I was about her plans. Richard promised to take care of her once she was free from her marriage. They'd even discussed which neighborhood she should look at for her post-divorce life. But here's where it got really interesting. Richard had no intention of leaving his wife, Nancy. In fact, in messages to his golf buddies, he bragged about having the perfect arrangement. A wife who maintained his social standing and a hot younger piece on the side who made him feel important. The PI also uncovered something I hadn't expected. Amber had applied for a home equity line of credit 3 months ago using a forged signature that was supposed to be mine. The bank had flagged it as suspicious, but hadn't rejected it outright yet. She was trying to extract $75,000 from our home's equity without my knowledge. That was a felony. Armed with this information, I contacted Richard's wife, Nancy. We met for coffee while Amber thought I was at work. Nancy was understandably devastated, but also coldly furious. She'd suspected something was going on, but hadn't had proof. What do you want to do about this? I asked her. Destroy them both, she said without hesitation. Richard's prenup has an infidelity clause. If I can prove he cheated, he gets nothing. We formed an alliance right there. Nancy was the vice president of human resources at Amber's law firm, which gave her significant power over my wife's career. We agreed to coordinate the timing of our confrontations for maximum impact. The other person I contacted was Kelly, Richard's executive assistant. Through the PI, I'd learned that Richard had promised to promote her multiple times, but had instead given opportunities to women who slept with him. Kelly was furious when I shared what I knew and agreed to help us gather even more evidence from inside the firm. My last step was visiting Amber's parents. They'd always liked me, and we'd maintained a good relationship over the years. I brought copies of the most damning evidence, not the intimate photos, but the text messages where she called me her starter husband, and the documentation of the forged loan application. Her father, a retired judge, was visibly shaken. This isn't how we raised her, he said repeatedly. Her mother cried and kept apologizing. I assured them I didn't blame them and explained my plan. They reluctantly agreed that Amber needed to face consequences, though they begged me to consider dropping the fraud charges if she cooperated with the divorce. I'll consider it, was all I promised, but she needs to understand the gravity of what she's done. During this time, I got a surprising call from Megan's husband, Dave. The PI had discovered that Megan was also having an affair with Dave's brother. Ironically enough, Dave was devastated when I shared the evidence. He confirmed what I suspected. Megan had been coaching Amber on how to maximize her divorce settlement and had even helped her create the secret bank account. These women think we're just ATMs, Dave said bitterly. They have no idea what's about to hit them. After 3 weeks of my calculated distance, I decided it was time for the confrontation. I dressed in my best suit, the new one I'd bought from this high-end menswear store, not the off-the-rack stuff she always complained made me look average. I left for work as usual, but returned home unexpectedly at noon. As I expected, she was on the phone speaking in hushed tones to Megan. I stood silently in the doorway until she noticed me and scrambled to end the call. You're home early, she said, looking nervous. Is everything okay?